Isobel and Justin prepare for birth using the Transform Your Birth course. She makes a decision that she wants to get through the process of birthing without the use of the drugs and commits to the practices in order to train her mind. Her and Justin have a good conversation on how he can support her to do this. She is facing induction at 42 weeks, and labour starts spontaneously without too much need for help. She goes so deep within herself she doesn't even think about the drugs. She feels completely calm and focused. Her partner was an amazing support, and this set them up both beautifully for the next stage with their little boy James. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to the Transform Your Birth course. We're up to episode 50. And for episode 50, we've got with us Isobel. And Isobel has had a little boy called James, and he's about 18 months old. And she is going to share with us her story today. Welcome, Isobel. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, Isobel, you were pregnant with James. How are you feeling in your pregnancy, and what sort of preparation did you do?
I was feeling really good. I really loved being pregnant. Um, and I yeah, it was just I didn't really have any complications. So I was just feeling really good. I wasn't thinking a lot about birth early on, to be honest. I knew generally what I wanted. I just wanted as natural as possible, vaginal birth, no drugs sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and I so the COVID was still a thing when I was pregnant, and
Yeah.
so I when we first started looking into the hospital classes, they weren't being run in person, and sort of as soon as I found that out, I knew I'd want something more. Um, than the hospital's classes. And that's when I started looking into what other classes are on offer in Canberra. And when I looked into like some hypnobirthing things, I saw that yours was very recommended. So I booked that, and yeah, I'm so glad I did. Um, yeah, yeah. Um,
How were you feeling coming into the course? Did you have any worries or concerns? It sounded like you knew what sort of a birth you wanted. Were you worried about anything?
um, I knew generally what I wanted, but I hadn't yet really made up my mind on whether I thought I was strong enough to do it. I knew I wanted it, but yeah, not whether I didn't fully believe 100% that I could
Yeah.
do it.
And tell me, Isobel, why?
Um, I no one close to me that had given birth um, recently, or even like talking to my mum and auntie about birth, they hadn't done it without drugs, and sort of yeah, talking to them about birth, um, they yeah didn't really share all that positive messages, or like placing doubts on whether I could do it without, or not in those words, but yeah, ha- voicing doubts, I guess. And yeah, just that I didn't know anyone personally who had done it without drugs and
Yeah.
had a positive experience, sort of thing.
Women can get a lot of messages when they're pregnant about whether they're going to be able to do it or not.
Mm,
And the whole messaging around drugs is certainly one of those messages where the message under the message is you're not going to be able to handle it.
hmm
And I always like to point out to people that women have been birthing since the beginning of time, long before drugs were ever invented. And here's the kicker is that we do actually have drugs, and they're called endorphins, and they're the body's natural opiates. But our minds are so filled with other people's doubts and concerns. And we have had a few generations of very disempowered birthing, where women, like the state of the woman, has been taken completely out of the context or the birthing day, and it's all about getting that baby here safely. And women have lost their confidence, and we need to bring that confidence back. So I really rally against those sorts of messaging.
mm.
But something in you told you you wanted to do it without the drugs. Do you know why? Or
Um, just that I tend to, I suppose, go that way. Just something. something about me just tends to want to do things that way, sort of thing, like as natural as possible or as close to like
Yeah.
nature as possible as we were intended to do, sort of thing. That's
Mm,
just what I wanted to do. Yeah, and maybe
beautiful.
I'm just that stubborn. I was like, no, I want to do it without
Yeah,
anything.
yeah. Good for you. Go girl.
Yeah.
So when you came to do the Transform Your Birth course, what were the sort of key shifts of mind around the birth process? What did you get the most out of?
Um, Definitely all that, all the explaining you do around like the science of birth and what's going on in our bodies, and yeah,
Mm.
the natural drugs that we have in our bodies that help us birth, and those were exactly what I needed to hear, what I wanted to hear, what I was looking for, to yeah, convince me that I 100% could do it.
Yeah,
And the second thing was everything that my birth partner, my husband, could do during birth
yeah.
was, yeah, we had no idea going in. He wasn't there to just watch and stay out of the way. He was there to play a big role in how it went.
All hands on deck.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And so, how did he experience that process of change? Did that give him the confidence?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm,
Um, he took a lot out of the birth. He was feeling I can't really remember how he was feeling going in. I think talking to him afterwards, before we went to the course, he said he was probably just thinking he was just there to watch, basically. There's
yeah,
not much he could do.
yeah.
But afterwards, yeah, he was excited about how much he could do to help. Yeah.
And how he could be involved.
Yep.
Out of all the feedback that I get when I see my families on the other side when the baby lands, one of the biggest ones is how amazing my partner was. So, when partners and birth support people realize what a significant role they can play, and it isn't tokenistic, it's very significant, they can actually influence that labor. They can make that labor easier and shorter. And of course, the flip side is they can make it longer and harder, particularly if they get stressed, overwhelmed, and that is contagious to the birthing mother. So preparation for partners is key. And there's many different ways you can prepare. There's programs called Beer and Bubs, which are all around Australia, which is quite effective. But I think the programs like Calm Birth, Hypnobirthing, and of course the Transform Your Birth course are better in that they're working with the mind and they're doing the training of not only the labouring woman to help her to, well, brainwash herself and to reach deeper and deeper states of relaxation, her partner is sharing that experience with her. So they're learning how to relax and they're learning the language to use during the birth that they can keep her on track and coach her through the whole process. So it becomes a real team effort.
Yeah,
So
he was amazing during birth. Like
was
he
he?
just knew exactly what I needed, anticipating, yeah, what I needed, and being my advocate, and just running around doing things I didn't even notice that was
Yeah,
helping.
wow.
Yeah,
Oh, I bet he was looking real shiny afterwards, hey?
he was. But at one point, all just the negative conversations while I was pregnant about birth, and um, things like people saying sort of like, "Well, what if you change your mind during like labor? You decide you do want drugs." And we did have an argument at one point towards the end. I think he was just so scared that during the worst part of labor, I would start asking for drugs, and he wouldn't know what to do because
Yeah,
I said I didn't want it. So I had to sort of remind him of all the stuff we'd learnt during your
yeah,
course, and like coach him on exactly what I wanted him to say and do if I got to that point, and sort of bring him back to where my mindset was.
yeah.
Um, and but yeah, I never did get to that point where I didn't feel
Ah,
like I could do it and started asking for drugs and all of
yeah,
that.
that's beautiful. That is an issue that we do deal with in the course, where women can have very clear ideas. They want to avoid the drugs if they can. And it's not to say, and I want to make this clear, and I know Isabel feels the same way, it's not to say that drugs don't have their place. They do. However, they do come at a cost. And the cost is to the mother and the baby. And that next phase, babies can be very sleepy and slow to feed, and mothers can feel a bit out of it and disassociated and all sorts of different states. And it can impinge upon that sort of key meeting of bonding and connecting and that next phase. Now, sometimes that's a cost worth paying, and we talk about under what conditions you might look at those types of tools in the toolkit, because they are in the toolkit, but we put them at the bottom of the bag. There's so many other things you can use to help give comfort to a woman in labour that don't involve the drugs, that don't have the side effects, like a bath is an epidural without the side effects. So it is worth having more than one tool in your toolkit, i.e. drugs, but also to cultivate that belief that you can get through without it. And then sometimes it might be appropriate. This is not about having any value judgments about them, but to have an actual realistic lens through which to look at the drugs from, because when you've got people out there saying, have the drugs, that all sounds fine in theory, but those people could be setting that mother up for a big fall in labour. Pardon me, particularly if she actually has a reaction to the drugs. Not everybody responds well to them. So it isn't ideal to give people advice about that sort of thing. A woman's got to find her own way, but she certainly needs more options than just the drugs. So, yeah, do you want
And
to say anything on that?
yeah, I did have the two people who in my family who'd given birth most recently both had um, an epidural and ended up having further interventions. So that was the main thing that I was like, I definitely don't want an
Yeah,
epidural. I don't want those interventions. And yeah, that was the main thing I could see firsthand, I suppose, the further risks to
yeah,
having those things. But at the same time, yeah, it was what was best for them, and that's
yeah,
good too. It just wasn't what I wanted, what I
absolutely.
wanted for my birth.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you got on the same page with your partner. You felt pretty good, like you'd gotten a few tools in the toolkit. You were ready to approach birth. Did you do the practices, Isabel, and what
I
impact did they have?
did. That's
Yeah,
what I was gonna say next, actually. Yeah, I did, quite a few I did the relaxation exercises quite a lot. I tried to do them, like, 3 times a week or so. I did a lot of I can't remember what it was called, but the day of your birth one.
the birth
Um,
rehearsal. Yeah,
that one, I really love that one, um, just for I guess, practice for how I wanted to be during labor, and I feel like that was one of the main things that helped me as well, like, no matter what the outcome was, how it had to go, just how I wanted my mindset to be, how I wanted to be during labor.
mm,
I really liked practicing that one.
yeah. So the birth rehearsals are very powerful because they're turning something that isn't familiar into familiar by
Mm,
training your mind and seeing yourself going through the process of welcoming those sensations and getting into second stage, feeling the urge to bear down and meeting your baby and birthing the placenta and the whole process. By doing that, you're basically saying to your deeper mind, your subconscious mind, that this is the operating system. This is how we want to respond to our birth. Now, it doesn't mean that when you do the practices, you make your birth look a certain way, but what it does help you to do is to respond a certain way, which is what you do have control over. So you're kind of training your mind and your response system to be a certain way in the birth process, which is free of fear, because we don't want those stress hormones. Feeling calm, feeling loving, feeling confident, all of those sorts of qualities start to come in and grow as you teach yourself to respond that way. Yeah, so the practices were big.
they were, and there was one point, during the pushing stage when James's heart rate, dropped right down. They called in a doctor or someone to come in. But by the time they came in, his heart rate had recovered. But I was just perfectly calm the whole time.
Wow.
And I was telling myself, like, by me staying calm and, like, doing my deep breathing is what's gonna help him the most at this moment.
Yeah.
And that's what she said when she came in. She got down on my level and was like, "You're being really calm, like, he's fine. This is completely normal when you're pushing his head, and just keep doing what you're doing."
Oh, lovely. What a beautiful message to receive. So, how about you
Mhm.
tell us about the day of his birth?
Right, yes. So, um, it started, I think, around 5 a.m. I had been waking up with Braxton Hicks every time I needed to pee in the middle of the night for weeks. And so on this morning, I'd woken up with Braxton Hicks, went to the bathroom, came back to bed. Usually by then it would go away. But I couldn't get back to sleep right away, and I noticed another tightening, and then another one, and I was thinking that doesn't usually happen. Um, Maybe I should write down the time if I get more. And sure enough, I kept getting these tightenings occasionally. And every so often, one of them would feel a bit crampy. So they didn't feel like my normal Braxton Hicks. I hadn't really noticed them throughout my pregnancy. Um, and they were coming around every 10 minutes. And I was thinking, well, I might just be leaning into my Braxton Hicks a bit more, because I should actually backtrack, because they're starting to talk about induction sort of thing, and I
Yeah.
was still wanting labour to start naturally. So at this point, I was 41 weeks, 6 days, and around 41 weeks is when my midwife started talking to me about induction. I didn't want an induction, but I also, I think, feeling a little bit worried about going into 42 weeks. I think if I was facing induction a second time, I would probably just say, "No, I don't want to, unless I feel like we need to go that route." But anyway, as a first-time mother, I was sort of like, "Okay, if that's what we need to do." Um, but yeah, so it was the morning. I think I woke up with that cramping around 5 a.m. I was meant to go in that day to get the Foley bulb placed, because that was the induction rate the induction method we were going to start with.
Yeah.
Um, and so yeah, when I was having those that cramping, I was sort of thinking, yeah, I might just be leaning into this a bit more, because I'm meant to be getting the Foley bulb placed today, but I still wanted it to start naturally. Um, but so yeah, I fell back asleep anyway, thinking I should just get some rest, if this is what it is. I should get more rest. And then, yeah, woke up to the midwife calling me to say, "Come in this afternoon to have the volleyball placed." Um, and by that time, I wasn't having those cramps anymore. And I thought, "Oh, well, that's fine. We're still going in to get the induction going and meet the baby." We were just so excited at that point to
Yeah.
meet James. Yeah, I wasn't too worried. And then I had to lie down around midday, and I noticed the cramping came back again. And then we went to take the dog for a walk right before we had to leave. And I noticed they felt a little bit more intense, a little bit more crampy than just my Braxton Hicks tightenings. And I think I was timing them again, and they were about 8 to 9 minutes apart, around 8 minutes apart, I think.
Hmm.
And then came home, packed up the last of the labour bag things, and got to the hospital. And it wasn't my usual midwife, because I was through the continuity program. It was her backup there. I think she was away for the weekend.
Yeah.
And when we went in, I was sort of asking her about the cramping I was having. I was saying, "I think I've woken up with what might be like early labor contractions. What will this mean for the induction process?" And she straight up was like, "You're not in labor." I knew as soon as you guys walked in here, like, "Oh, she's not in labor." I could just tell by how you're acting. And I was kind of a bit disappointed. I was like, "Oh, these felt a bit different to my Braxton Hicks cramping. I thought this was something." Um, and then, anyway, so we were waiting around there a bit, because the head midwife was going to oversee her doing the Foley bowl. And at that point, the birthing center had only just opened up from being the ward for COVID positive
right. Right.
So it was, yeah, we weren't even sure if we were going to be in the birthing center, but yeah, it just opened up, so that was good.
Mm.
So yeah, the midwife came in to watch her do the Foley balloon, um, and she was saying she was sort of talking it through with Shilpa, which was helpful for us to hear all of the explanations. Otherwise, I imagine they would have just gone in and done it. um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so she was explaining like the potential problem is that we don't have any large speculums in the whole hospital. Like I don't know why we don't have any large sizes. She was like, we just we want the large to be able to see exactly what we're doing, sort of thing. She's like, but we'll give it a go anyway. Um, Shilpa, my backup midwife, tried, but she wasn't able to get it in. The head midwife asked if she could try. I was like, yes. I don't want to go straight into whatever the next step is. Um, and she said the same thing. She wasn't able to get it in behind my cervix. So that was a bit disappointing. I was hoping that that could do its thing overnight, dilate my cervix some more so that if I had to go on the drip, that it would have less work to do. And I might even be able to turn it off if my body took over. So that was a bit disappointing. They were saying well, they were trying to have it placed. I was saying some women like to have the gas for the placing of the Foley bowl, but I sort of thought of it as a little bit of labor practice. I could start practicing the like mind tools or breathing tools or whatever.
Yeah.
And Justin was like stroking my arm and talking softly in my ear. So that was some nice like touch and audio input to focus on instead of what
Beautiful.
they were doing. Um, and so that was really helpful to focus on instead of the pain. Um, but overall, wasn't too bad. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't successful. But the midwife was like, "I'll just check how dilated you are." And just prior to having it placed, I was 1.5 centimeters, and then after trying to place it, she was like, "Oh, it worked instantly. Instantly 3 centimeters. We can go ahead and get you on the drip and break your waters and get the baby here." And I was a little bit apprehensive. I was like, "Oh, I thought we were going to stay here overnight," and I mentally prepared for it to happen tomorrow. But she was pretty reassuring. She was like, "You came in for the induction. You know, you'll meet your baby in the morning. Let's get it going." And I was like, "Yeah, great. I'm excited to meet my baby." And but then there was some bad news though, or maybe it was good news in the end. But there was no room in the birthing center. We'd have to go home and do our last night all over again. We were pretty disappointed. We were really wanting the next time we go home was to be with James. Um, but I was also secretly glad because it was one more chance for Labour to start by itself.
Yeah.
Um, and not that I put too much hopes or thought into it. It was just mildly, oh, it's at least there's one more chance for Labour to start on its own.
Mm.
So we
And you're
decided,
going to sleep a lot better at home, aren't you? Less
yes,
distracted. Yeah. And that's not a bad option, too, if you have the opportunity to go home and get a good night's sleep and then come in the morning when you're much fresher. So, what happened when you got home?
yeah. So we decided we'd have dinner as soon as we got home, go for a walk, get an early night because it was probably going to be a big day tomorrow. So as soon as we got home, I got my butt on the yoga ball. I'd been using the yoga ball instead of a couch for weeks at this point. And I could feel the contractions again. They were feeling a bit more intense while we ate dinner. I think at this point they were around 7 minutes apart. I kept timing them, and then we went for a walk, and that's when they picked up intensity. And I thought, oh, okay, I think this is actually labor, because they felt painful now. Only mildly. I could still walk through them fine. And I think they're around 6 to 7 minutes apart now. And then came home, got into bed. I think at this point it was 9 p.m. or so when we shut off the TV to try and go to sleep. And as soon as we turned it off TV off to try and go to sleep is when they picked up again in
Oh,
intensity.
wow.
I tried to fall asleep for half an hour. It just wasn't happening. I was timing them again, and I think they were 2 minutes apart at this point.
Wow.
Um, and I laid in bed timing them for about an hour, and I was like, right, if this is really it, if I get up and change position and they stay 2 minutes apart, then yep, this is real. And yeah, I came out to try and sit on my yoga ball or something, and they stayed 2 minutes apart. And I wasn't really thinking much about it, just sort of welcoming every contraction. At 42 weeks, I was definitely ready to meet this
I
baby.
bet you were. Yeah.
Yeah, so just willing them to continue, basically. Yeah, I've been waiting for so long for labor to start. So it was only after about 30 minutes Justin came to check on me, and I said, I think we should call the midwife. She said not to call until they're 2 minutes apart for 2 hours, and it had only been about an hour and a half at this point. But I was like, they feel pretty intense. It's picked up pretty quickly. I think we should call her now. And I don't think she believed us, because the first thing she asked me was, "Is this like the contractions you were having and asking about at the hospital earlier?" And I said, "No, these are more intense." And I think she was asking me questions. She was trying to ask me to rate the pain, and I knew they like to talk to you to try and gauge how far along you are. And I hate that question about trying to rate the pain. It annoyed me both times she asked me. I remember, yeah, being like, I don't know where I max out. Like I'd just be giving you a random number. I don't know. And she was like, okay, just take some Panadol, get in the shower, um, and use a heat pack. And I don't think she expected us to have to call her back before she called us in the morning, because Justin had to ask her, like, "Okay, what do we call you back in a little bit or what?" And she must have said, "Yeah, just see how you go." I don't know. I think it was 11 p.m. at this point. But I jumped in the shower. Justin got the heat pack out of the labour bag that we left in the car. We didn't think we'd be needing anything. Um, and yeah, they were intense in the shower. I was just sort of swaying and letting the water run down my back and on my belly. And um and then it was only about an hour I started to feel like I don't think I'd be able to do a car ride soon, so I
Mm.
think we better go in. I asked Justin to call the midwife. And this is, yeah, only after an hour. Apparently she sounded a bit annoyed and sort of sighed. I don't think she expected us to call her back so soon. Um, but yeah, in the end, just and she tried to. That's when she tried to ask the question to me again, and I was annoyed. So I don't know, Shilpa. I don't know what number to give you. So Justin was like, "We're coming in,"
Yeah.
and yeah, somehow managed to dry myself and get dressed and get in the car. In the car, things sort of started to feel a bit easy. I was a bit worried that we'd left too early, because I wanted to stay home as long as we could.
Yeah.
Um, I had an apple juice, but then as soon as we got there, yeah, it took a while to get from the car park just upstairs, because they was intense. And then yeah, we got into the room. I wasn't able to go into the birthing center because I had developed low platelets and they wanted continuous monitoring, and I had to have a cannula in. And I hadn't wanted the continuous monitoring, but it also didn't worry me too much. Um, at the stage I was at, I was just so
Mm.
internally focused. We
Yeah.
were in the regular birthing suite, but it still had a bath. Um, and but still, that, yeah, didn't bother me as much as I thought it would when I was still pregnant. Just yeah, so internally focused on listening to my body and responding to the contractions. And then she did a um, vaginal examination to see how dilated I was. Um, I We told her I don't want to know the number, um, because I knew I'm that sort of person that if I hear a number, um, not so high, I'd
Yeah.
start getting in my head about how many how much effort took to get effort took to get to where I was,
Yeah.
and how much then was left to go.
Yeah.
Um, so I told her I didn't want to know, and she wrote it on a piece of paper and showed it to Justin. I had my eyes closed, so I didn't see, but apparently she did a happy dance. I was 5 centimeters.
Yeah.
And Justin said when she showed him the number, he sort of felt like, oh, we got a long way to go. Then, like if they say, what is it, half a centimeter every hour or something like that, it's going to be a long night. But that's exactly why I didn't want to know the number, because
Yeah.
that was not the case.
I'm not surprised. You were very
Yeah,
calm and relaxed, weren't you? You were very
I
difficult
was.
to read potentially in labor, and that can be the case when people have trained themselves to relax in labor. They can be very tricky to read as to where you're up to in your labor, and you don't always show the same signs that women who haven't trained in this way can show. So, how was that last 5 centimeters?
So it was only 1.5 hours being at the hospital until I was
Yeah,
fully
pushing.
dilated.
Yeah, there you go.
Um, so I, yeah, had a plan for myself that I'd sort of just start on the bed and sort of then maybe get on a yoga ball, then in the shower, and then in the bath as I sort of needed more pain relief or just to change it up. But I just stayed there on the bed on my left side. I had a comb in my hand that I was squeezing to focus on that as much as I could instead of the contractions.
Yeah,
Um, when we got into the room, Justin um, had was setting up the room how we wanted. Asked them to turn the main lights off. He set up some LED candles. We took my salt lamp from home that I use in the bedroom as my little lamp, so it felt a little like the bedroom. And it was
nice.
dark and had the music going that I wanted. And sort of between contractions, I would just almost try and sleep between contractions, like just relax as much as possible,
Yeah,
to conserve energy. I sort of jamming along to the music in my head. And then during contractions, I was like talking to myself in my head, like telling myself, I think mainly that I was like calm and strong and I could do this. And I remember you telling a story in your course about the woman who, during labor, was pretending she was climbing to the top of a mountain, and then when she got to the top, she'd look at the view. And so in my mind, I was like looking for the peak of the contraction, and like, yeah, it was getting more intense, and this is the peak. It's going to start easing in a minute, and yep, it's starting to ease. And then I sort of try and, yeah, almost sleep between contractions.
nice.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
nice. And so tell us about the pushing stage, Isabel. What was that like?
So I had started on the on all fours with my elbows resting on the back of the bed. Um, and I didn't feel like I was making much progress. I don't know how long I pushed like that before my midwife suggests I sort of lay on I think my right side with my thighs up to push against, and that straight away felt much more productive.
Yeah,
I could feel more progress being made like that. Um, and I pushed like I pushed like that for probably close to 2 hours. We When we started to be able to see ahead, Justin was taking photos to show me my progress, which was really cool.
wow.
I love that. At one point, when you could when he was a bit further out, I'd be able to see him. My midwife was like, "Isabel, like, have a look." And I remember I was so sweaty and like just trying to rest between contractions. I was like, "No, I'm good." She's like, "Yeah, have a look," and I was like, "Yeah, it's cool, okay." um, at one point, she um, asked her assistant to get the episiotomy pack out, and I had on my birth preferences that I would prefer to tear. And so Justin, I mean, yeah, was like, "Oh, she'd prefer to tear." As soon as she said that, he was like, "Yeah, she preferred to tear." And I was like, um, if that's what we need to do to get him here, then obviously let's do it. And she was like, I just like to get it ready just in case we need it. And I don't know if she did that on purpose, but as soon as she said that, I was like, I got to get him out right now.
A bit of incentive.
And yeah, so I was already, yeah, pushing hard, but I pushed even harder, more pushes during contractions. And yeah, so, but yeah, and then, yeah, his head was out, and he was just chilling there until, um, waited for the next contraction, and I think I got the rest of him out then. We did have to break my waters, I think, close to, before his head was through. I think she was saying, he's close to being born in his sack at this point, but I think because we were getting too close to, we must have been getting close to the
Mm,
2-hour mark or something, she asked if she could break the waters, and yeah, then it wasn't long before he came out, I think.
wow. Wow. And what was it like when you met him?
Amazing, yeah, I felt so happy and relieved, and yeah, it was a beautiful moment,
Oh,
yeah,
that's lovely.
just instant connection,
So
yeah.
you'd had a lot of people planting seeds about you needing the drugs, and ultimately you didn't need the drugs.
No, no, no,
What and you talked a little bit about what you were doing with your mind. Did you ever at any point in that process feel like you wanted them?
no, never. I never felt like they were
Mm,
more than I could handle, like, during the, like, relaxation practices,
yeah,
reminding myself a lot that my body wouldn't give me more than I could handle.
yeah.
And so I think I just knew that during labor it wouldn't be more than I could handle. And yeah, I did expect to get to a point where I just felt like I couldn't do it, and it I need, yeah, I just, it's got to be over. I can't do it anymore. But yeah, I never got to that point.
Yeah,
And
wow.
so when I started to feel the need to bear down, I could feel my body bearing down, and I said to her, "Shilpa, I can feel my body starting to bear down." She was, because it was only, I guess, 1.5 hours after we got there. She was like, "Isabel, you're not 10 centimeters. Like, squeeze your butt to stop yourself from pushing. Tell me when you can't stop yourself from pushing." It probably wasn't long after that I was like, "Sure, but I can't stop myself from pushing." And she was like, "I think it's moving faster than I thought. Like, I'm still setting up the room." And but she measured me, and yeah, it said I was 10 centimeters. I was shocked. I was like, "What?"
Yeah,
Oh, I
because you
didn't. Yeah, I couldn't
can.
believe that.
You can, even as a first time mother, dilate from 5 to 10 very, very quickly. Once that cervix is thinned out and when a woman's really relaxed and potentially, good positioning to encourage the baby's descent, but that women can dilate very quickly towards the end. It's been my experience working with women because of the training that they've done, and they're practicing deep, deep relaxation. What did you learn about yourself, Isabel?
Just how, um, yeah, strong physically and mentally I can be, and Um, I'll, yeah, forever use that as a benchmark for yeah, how strong I can be. And I've always been, like, a little bit anxious of person, but during labor, just so sure of myself, and like just focused completely on listening to my body and that sort of thing. Just, yeah, nothing is like it. And it was, yeah, euphoric process. And I remember right after I said to Justin, "That was kind of fun." And he was like, "Do not tell any of your family members you said that."
I want to go
But it
again.
was fun.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Well, these are the possibilities that are open to us as women when we learn to work with our birth, with our bodies, not against it. When we do the training of the mind, we practice relaxing and down regulating stress, which is the sort of thing that can pull you out of a good labor. It can interfere by releasing stress hormones. When we've learnt to work with the birth, then we're really opening ourselves to the potential of the body for it to do. We're optimizing the body's response to that labor for it to do what it needs to do to get that baby born. So you certainly were able to optimize your body's response and your mind to the whole process. Is there anything you'd like to tell our listeners, and any wisdom you'd like to share with them?
Um, Not really, just to, I guess, into leading up to birth, I guess, just to learn as much as you can about how to lean into,
Mhm.
the process, how to, what to do to let it unfold, and let your body do its thing because it knows exactly how to birth, and
Yeah.
yep, you're just along for the ride.
Yeah, beautiful. That's fantastic. You did make a comment that it's become a benchmark now for you forevermore. Tell me how that's influenced your parenting.
Um, just I guess I I always think back on it, and think about how much I want to get, like, how I can get back into that, calm and, like, strong mindset, and if, it's facing challenges and feeling unsure and, um, yeah, anxious, just to remind myself, like, how powerful your mindset can be if you,
Mm,
can find yourself find your way back to that calm mindset and just listening to your instincts. It was a huge thing I learned, in the parenting journey in the first years,
yeah,
how strong your instincts can be and how, um, yeah, listening to those can help you a lot. Yeah.
yeah. And I love that you've said that, Isabel, because that's where the answers are. The
Mm.
answers to our baby do not lie in the minds of other people or books or Google or whatever. The answers to our babies are in them and our ability to read them. And in order to do that, we need to cut down the noise and we need to listen to ourselves. And so the process of what you learnt to listen to yourself in the birth process, to go inward. And it's easier to do in birth than at any other time because your whole mind wants to take you into that primal part of your brain, and that quieter part, the cortex layer of your brain, goes offline. So you don't overthink when you're in labor, unless, of course, you fight it or people, are throwing things at you and overstimulating you in labor. And that's the exact same mindset that helps you to learn and attune to what your baby needs. So I love that you've brought that up because it's the inner world, that inner, deeper mind that we're often not always in touch with when we're overthinking, is the part of the mind that also helps that new mother to read the baby and to listen to her instincts in the way you described it.
Mm.
So there's been a lot of wisdom that has come out of this interview with lovely Isabel and the birth of little James that we can learn. She had to start during her pregnancy to shut down the noise. She got very determined about deciding to do this birth without the drugs. She did the training, she did the course and the training. She got a partner on board and got very clear and helping him also to know and understand how to work with her if she decided in the middle of the birth to ask for the drugs. And with that conversation, they were both on the same page. She went into labour. She was able to work with her birth all the way through and didn't even get to the point of even considering the drugs in labour. And I think it affirms what I truly believe, that most of the time, and I'd say 70% of the time, we don't need them. Okay, our body's got a whole lot of feel good performance enhancing hormones that we can use, and we can maximize and optimize that response when we learn to relax. So, Isabel's story has been a beautiful representation of undisturbed physiological birth, where she was able to really work with her inner resources. And then, of course, she shares how that's supported her in her parenting as well and given her a beautiful benchmark to remind herself that she can go back into that zone when she needs to. So thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you so much, Isabel, for sharing your beautiful story for episode 50, which is a bit auspicious, I think.
Thank you. Thanks so
Uh,
much.
Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for listening. And we'll have more goodness for you next week. Have a good week. Bye-bye. This episode has been brought to you by Transform Parenting, an organisation that provides courses, coaching and community from pregnancy through to the first 7 years of a child's life. It is a place where you can learn, get support and grow into your role as a parent. Our Transform Your Birth course, both in Canberra and online, is waiting for you to feel calmer and more confident to give birth and change the way you labour. Or why not watch our free masterclass on Keeping Relaxed and Excited About Birth, where we discuss the 3 most important things that can change a birth. You'll find us at our website on www.transformparenting.com.au.